Hello everyone, it's Grace. Welcome back to another video. The video that I am going to be doing today is going to be a review mixed with my 5-star predictions series, and today's is going to be for Jade War by Fonda Lee, the second book in her Greenbone saga, which is wrapping up in just a few days at the time that I'm filming this, but I am here to talk to you about the second book in the series. So first off, we have Jade City and then Jade War, and I read Jade City in February of this year, and I honestly didn't mean to put Jade War off for so long, and honestly, I have mixed feelings about the fact that I did, because on the one hand, I'm kicking myself because I loved this book so much and I was missing out on it for months. But at the same time, I'm thinking, wow, I loved this book so much and now I barely have to wait any time at all before I can read Jade Legacy. So in that sense, I'm not mad about it. So I am going to make this review both spoiler-free and spoiler-filled, and I will have timestamps in the description so that you can see where I go into spoilers and what is not. And so what I'll do is I will try and wrap up at the end with another spoiler-free section so that you can go hear my final thoughts if you would like to. But first off, I'm going to start by saying that in terms of my 5-star predictions, this is the third book that I have read out of 7 that I had on that list, and this was 5 stars. I adored this book. I loved Jade City, but this just like stepped up everything that I loved about Jade City. It did everything well. So like I am going to talk about that in more detail, but honestly this was an easy 5-star to give. I just loved it so much. So this was my second successful 5-star prediction out of the 3 that I have read so far. So I'm doing pretty well, and I am happy to indeed say that I was right about this one. It was 5 stars. So first off, spoiler free, let's start by talking about my favorite thing about this book, and that was the characters. And there are some specific reasons why I liked this book so much in terms of the characters, because in the first book, I was attached to, so just to be clear, this is spoiler free for Jade War, but not for Jade City, since this is the second in a series. So during Jade City, I felt connected to Lan and Shay mostly, and I felt connected to Andon too, not as much though, but Shay was my anchor in Jade City because of course we know what happened to Lan, and Hilo or Hilo, I'm not even sure. I'm gonna go with Hilo because that's how it sounds in my head, but he was a very interesting character, but he wasn't somebody in the first book that I connected to necessarily. And so when we started Jade War, first of all, there is a gap of time between the last book and this book. I'm not sure exactly how long, but the characters have had time to even grow up a little bit more. And then on top of that, Jade War actually takes place over quite a long span of time. So this book takes place over like 3.5 or 4 years, which I wasn't expecting going in, but I think was a very clever way to do it, because Fonda Lee packs a lot into this book, but because of the fact that it happens over a longer period of time, you get to see the characters grow and become more complex as they are forced into really difficult situations where you can understand why they take the actions that they take, even if you don't agree with them. And sometimes you even agree with both of them, except a choice has to be made one way or the other, and like inevitably somebody is going to be wrong, or somebody is not going to get what they want. It is a really interesting cast of characters in that sense, because you will have situations where people feel like they're getting the short end of the stick, except you can, from the other person's perspective, totally see why they're acting the way that they're acting. And I think that that is one of the main strengths of this book. Fonda Lee she writes these characters so well, and there are so many that I feel connected to now. Like, this is what I want from a sequel, is to level up in terms of my connection to the characters, because now I've spent another entire book with them, so I should feel more connected to them, and this did that perfectly for me. In terms of pacing, like I mentioned, this does take place over a long period of time, but I think that Fonda Lee did a really good job of expressing to you the lengths of time that this is taking place over without feeling like you're dragging through these long periods between major events. Because like the way that this plot is set up with crime families and kind of like clans, there are always going to be small happenings and small events going on at different times, but she does a really good job of sprinkling those throughout and then having bigger events that happen and tying them all together, while also expressing to you that like these things take time and they take planning, and time has passed, but you haven't necessarily had to deal with that less exciting part. Like, she balances that really well. Another strength of Jade War is the world building, in my opinion, and the magic, because we get to see, and these two things are tied together because of the nature of jade, which is the magical substance in this series, as you would know if you read Jade City, and you can kind of infer just by the names of the books. But jade is a magical substance that can be used by some people and not by others, or it can be used by those people, but it might have negative effects for them just because they are not the right nationality to not experience these effects. Like, it's like a genetic thing. So the way that I think it's really clever is that in this book, Fonda Lee expands the world. So instead of just experiencing things on the island of Kikon, we are expanding to there being like multiple countries involved in worldwide conflict, and we also get to see certain like events happen in a few different countries. And so because of this, we get to see the economics and the like use of jade and how the magic system works in other parts of the world, and how like, because jade is a resource, and I mentioned economics, like there is a very interesting relationship between the countries of the world because they want to use jade and they want to make money off of it and they want to be part of this sector of the economy. So it's not only a magic system, but it is also a world building tool because each country in this world has a different relationship with jade, and all of them are different from the traditional greenbone like way of life with jade on Kikon. So it is a very interesting thing to see how these characters react to the outside world and how they use jade, and like how everybody views it differently. And so you do get world building in other countries outside of jade specifically. It's just that that is used heavily as a tool to illustrate how people from different countries have different points of view on things and how they have different traditions, and it is just a really interesting like linchpin for all of that information. And then in terms of the plot in this book, there were so many like impactful moments. I loved the plot in this book because it was balanced really well with character. Like it doesn't move too fast. It's not all plot, but it's the characters driving the plot. So when you have big events happening, you are like worried for what's going to happen to your characters, and you can feel the suspense and the tension, and you want them to come out okay, but you know that not everyone is going to come out okay all the time. And so the plot is really well paced, I think, in the sense, I mentioned this before, but in the sense that there are major events throughout, and then there is a really like tense and satisfying climax, because even though there are major events that happen, the actual climax of the book is something that has been set up earlier on and has threads throughout the entire book. So in that sense, it was a very satisfying way to wrap it up, and it is also a very significant event in the sense that it has like rippling impact, not just for our characters, but for their their wider conflicts and the wider world, and so it just makes me so excited to see where Jade Legacy is going. So I hope that if you have read Jade City and not Jade War, this motivates you to pick it up. It was honestly such an incredible book that I loved, and if Jade Legacy coming out is not enough of a motivator for you to pick up Jade War, I don't know, man. This is the perfect time to pick this book up. Okay, so now I'm gonna hop on into spoilers, and I don't know how structured this part is going to be because I'm honestly just going to talk about the things that I love and see where it takes me. And the first major thing that I want to talk about that I loved in this book is Hilo and Shay and Wen and the relationships between like kind of these three in general and the Call family, because that was what really shone for me. I didn't really connect all that much to Hilo in the first book, and I think that the reason why is explored in this book, like it is kind of stated, and it's mostly seen from Andon's perspective, where he can see that Hilo, instead of being like a more immature, like brute, like instead of being the Horn, where he basically had to worry about violence and that was his job and that was what he did, he has had to grow up a lot. And that is what made his character like super complex and interesting to me in this one, because you know, you can see that he hasn't changed fundamentally as a person. Like when somebody wrongs his family, he is still going to get vengeance on them. He is still he is not someone to mess with, except that now, like he has been forced to grow because he has had to take the Pillar's position. But the thing that I love about it is that he knows that he can't act the way that he would have before, whether that was impulsive or just with only like vengeance in mind. Now he has to really make an attempt to be more of a strategic mind, and he actually kind of excels at it. Like I am super impressed by how good he is at that in this book, and how like him and Shay finally have a working relationship where they're not just trying to make each other angry. They may not be each other's favorite person necessarily, but like they really do respect each other, and Hilo makes an effort to like read and internalize what Shay tells him about the business side, whereas like if things are too complex and she knows that he's not going to fully understand it, she will take care of it. But he also like supports her wholeheartedly because she's a member of his family. So he was the biggest standout character for me in this book, like not in terms of necessarily being my favorite, but being the biggest step up in my personal enjoyment from Jade City to Jade War, because I already loved Shay after Jade City, and so in this book, like I thought she was a standout too, and I loved like her emotional journey, and like she went through some tough things. But the thing is, like while she was still phenomenal in this book, it was like I already loved Shay. So it wasn't that step up, whereas I wasn't crazy about Hilo in Jade City, and in this book, like he has become also a favorite character for me. So I just thought that was really impressive, the way that Fonda Lee showed that growth for him, because I thought it was really realistic. Like I said before, it's not as though he's lost that person that he has to be, but he has been forced into a role with responsibility, and he has taken it on admirably, in my opinion. And so the other aspect of this is like Hilo's relationship with Wen and Wen's relationship with Shay, and sort of just the way that all three of those characters work together, because I really like Hilo and Wen's marriage. It's like very clear that they love each other, and I love the fact that Wen can still be a strong woman who can do like things for the clan and have her own life while she's being a mother and like providing Hilo with Call family heirs. And so like she doesn't scoff at that being her role, but she creates a role for herself that is more than just that. And like Hilo respects her opinion, and he listens to her, and he wants to hear what she thinks. And so I think that they just have a really nice partnership. But I love Wen's relationship with Shay, because they have this like incredibly, it feels funny to say the word heartwarming because of the things that they go through in this book, but I find their relationship so heartwarming because Shay is afraid that Wen will judge her for getting an abortion just because she's a mother, right? But Wen actually admires her for being able to make that decision because she was able to make that decision for the good of the clan, and it was actually the opposite of a selfish decision for what Shay was making. And the fact that Wen can come to Shay and ask Shay to get her work that will help the clan because she knows that Shay will see her usefulness, and not that she doesn't want to protect her, but she won't want to protect her in the same way that her husband would. Shay is a very logical person, and she will be able to see that yes, this is something that we should be doing. Wen can maintain a network of spies, that is a good idea, that type of thing. And so they just have an amazing relationship. And I love Wen and I love Shay. And Shay is just an incredibly interesting mix of a businessman, but she still stays true to her greenbone roots at the same time, which sounds counterintuitive because obviously being the weatherman of a clan is a traditional greenbone position, but I guess I mean that Shay wants to be progressive and she wants to change the way that things are done, which I like, but when it's time for her to take things into her own hands, if she thinks that she needs to, she will offer Mata a clean blade, which when she did that, my mind was literally just blown. She will not be afraid to go do something like that. She has nerves of steel, and she's also smart enough to know that when she yields at the end of the battle, if Mata then kills her, that would be the dishonorable action. And so she's saving herself in two ways, because she shouldn't be able to kill her because she has surrendered, and if she does, then Shay has saved face for her own clan, because then if Hilo breaks the rules and goes after them, it wouldn't be him who first broke them. It would actually be him responding to something else dishonorable that had been done. So I love little things like that. I love how smart Shay is, and I love that she can be shown as both this critical thinker, this logical weatherman, and a backbone, one of the backbones of the clan, while also being shown as a woman and having a romance and balancing that really well. And again, plot threads, her with Marrow, those plot threads come all the way through the book, and when the bombing happens, you know immediately, or at least you can make that connection and you know what happened, but you also know that these are complex characters, it wasn't his fault. That's another thing that Shay has to go through. She has to kill him, which was an extremely emotional moment that got to me, and there were just so many good ones for her in this book. It was incredible. And then another character who upped my attachment to them in this book was Andon, because I liked him in the first book, but I admit to feeling frustrated with him when he refused Jade, and so I guess I was in a similar vein to Hilo, but I wasn't as frustrated with him. I understood why he did it, but I was also I guess disappointed, because I really had hopes that we would see him develop into a greenbone warrior, but I understand now why it was a good decision for that not to happen. And he provided a really interesting perspective in Aspenia, because he's half Kekanese and half Aspenian, and so him living over there and going to school is a huge part of what widened the world in this book. And it also gave him the perspective that when he came back and after he had saved Wen, the kind of wherewithal to say, you know what, maybe I could be a healer with Jade, and maybe that could be my path. So I really like that for him. And I also really like that he got to have a relationship with Corey, because I wasn't necessarily expecting there to be that representation in there for Andon, but I thought that was really nice for him to get to explore. That was a really nice relationship. I liked Corey, and I thought that the concept of having sort of a clan, but not really a clan, with the pillar and all that happening in Espina was a really interesting concept, because it goes back to what I said in the non-spoiler section about how there's a whole culture around Jade, but everyone is going to view Jade differently, and the perspectives in every country are different. So in that sense, it's like, how does a clan work when you can't show your Jade publicly? How does that function? So it was really interesting to see that. And then in terms of the plot, I did think that it was really well done how early on we see the first confrontation with Zapunyo. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but we saw the first confrontation with him really early on, which I thought was really well done, because there's so much else happening in the book that you don't necessarily get fixated on him, but you know that he's there the whole time. Like, there are threads pulling throughout the whole book, like that link Zapunyo to like illegal jade trade, and they are going after him the entire book, but it's not viewed as big of a problem until it is, because obviously he strikes back. They use Marrow to bomb the car, and that part was heartbreaking. But I really did enjoy how after that happens, they have to wait, they have to bide their time, and they have to plan, because these things, like, they may be a clan that can commit violence, but if they're not on their own turf, they can't just do that. So they have to wait, they have to plan, and then they finally get to go after him. And I loved the fact that it was Andon, Shay, and Wen that had planned this together, because I don't disagree with Hilo that like maybe they should have called it off, maybe the risk was too high, but I agreed with the other three where this could be the only opportunity that they have. And so I liked that they were successful in that. But when things really went sideways for them with the crews were also set up to be a problem throughout this whole book. So like that climax with Ron Toro unfortunately being killed and Andon saving Wen, that was still very satisfying, because it sets up the fact that we're kind of coming full circle and all of these problems are like threaded together and they're being given the attention that they deserve. So yeah, I found the way that the plot wrapped up really satisfying. So I am gonna jump back into non-spoilers now for my final thoughts, and I guess I'm kind of just gonna reiterate more of what I said, but my favorite part of this by far was that it just stepped up my connection to the characters so much. There were so many emotional moments that like got me tearing up, and I love when a book can do that, because it just shows that I really am connected and invested. And I thought the plot was really well done, the pacing, like I'm even more interested to learn more about the world now and to continue to learn about Jade and to see it being used, because it is going to be very relevant, I think, in conflicts to come in an international way now, because Jade War really stepped up the level of conflict, and I'm so excited to read Jade Legacy, guys. So yeah, Jade War was a 5-star for me. Please drop in the comments and let me know what you loved about this book. I mean, or what you didn't like, but let me know what you think about what I thought. And I hope that you liked this video. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content from me, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!